Welcome to the first in a three-part blog and video post about foiling. And foiling is taking something that you've printed and then applying this heat foil to it so that you have a gorgeous gold or other beautiful color metallic finish. And you would say it's easy, but there are so many different variables that can cause you to either have a perfect foil or a super splotchy foil. So in today's video, I want to go over how to ensure that you have a perfect foil every time, what you should use, what you should avoid, and how to combine those all together so that you are never wasting a single piece of foil, paper, or your time. First of all, for your foil, you might right away think, well, foil options are what I need to think about. But your foundation for your foil is this is like a hint, paper. Your paper is one of the most important aspects of successful foiling, because if there is a texture to the paper, when it goes through the printer, the ink will not get on every single area. And when you go to foil, you're still going to be able to see black ink spots through. So that is not ideal. I always use this super fine printing cardstock. I had wanted to do this video for you a few days ago already, but I actually had to use up the last of my paper. And I know that if I try to use any other paper, my results will not be as perfect. So this super fine paper, and of course I'll be putting a link to all of my recommended supplies down below, is definitely the way to go. It has an extra press through the paper presser machine, whatever that's called, and it has a really, really fine surface, but it also still absorbs the toner from your laser printer really well in order to ensure that you have perfect toner coverage on a perfectly smooth paper. Now you might say, well, what if I use a glossy paper? Wouldn't that work really well? It might, except the toner often will slip and slide around the top. So while you can try out other papers if you'd like, I have tried so many. I probably tried 6 different types of papers, and a lot of them I thought were a smooth paper, but this superfine printing paper works the best. Take my word for it. The next thing that you will need to have in order to create your beautiful foil effect is still not foil. It is a printer. This foil and all of these types of foils are all heat activated, which mean that you are going to then be putting this foil on top of toner, and there's going to be a chemical reaction that happens between the two. Now that chemical reaction is based on the chemicals that are in the toner. Ink printing does not contain the same chemicals and therefore will not work with your foil. So you must use a laser printer. Now, 2 things to consider when you're using a laser printer, and I've already printed out a sample sheet. You want to consider how large or small you're going to be doing your printing, and always do a test. You need to make sure that even when you look up close, that there are no spaces or maybe areas where it's flecked off. I always ensure that I don't put my finger on any of the toner before I go to foil it. So try to walk your paper like this. Try not to let anything touch it, because even losing a little bit of that toner or getting some of your finger oils on it can impact the way that your final design looks. I would suggest using slightly larger words when you're doing your foiling, just because it'll give you more bang for your buck. And if any little toner comes off, you still have quite a bit of your word to make up for it. Using thinner lines, like in this sort of font, can sometimes cause you to have areas where maybe the foil doesn't adhere so nicely. But that being said, I have used foil on something even smaller than this, and it still gave a beautiful golden gleam. One thing that you definitely want to test out with any printer that you're using is a square. How solid is the coverage for black, or is it one of the laser printers that actually does dots where you can see spaces between the dots. You might know what I'm talking about. There are printers that are designed to save toner by doing dots with slight spaces in between, and you want to make sure that you have one that gives full coverage. Typically, Brother printers do a really good job of putting down full toner across solid spaces like this, which means that you'll also have that full toner coverage on any word that you might want to foil. Now it's time, finally, for us to talk about foil. While there are a few different types of foil out there, I would say that the two biggest foil giants in the industry are definitely the Mink foil by Heidi Swapp. She's the one who has the foil machine, and then also this iCraft Deco foil. Now, one of the really nice things about the Heidi Swapp line is the variety of colors that they offer. There are beautiful things like this ombre effect. There are multiple different shades of pink. There are things like this hologram one, which looks like it went through the laundry machine, but most of them don't look like that when you get it. The Deco foil, on the other hand, doesn't have nearly as many options for colors in these large rolls. They have quite a few options for colors if you get single sheets of them, or if you get these smaller rolls, but these smaller rolls here are only 5 sheets of 6 inches by 12 inches. So you're paying a lot for only a few foils. Whereas these large rolls are actually 25 feet long, which is crazy. When you look at the Mink version, each roll is only 10 feet long. So that does give you a good indication of how much more, 2.5 times, you can get out of one of these Deco foil rolls. Now, there aren't as many color options, but these large rolls, I would have to say, are definitely worth it. For me, I find that these give the best coverage. They have the fewest skipped areas, so where there are little black patches left, and it means that I am not wasting nearly as much time, paper, or foil trying to get a perfect piece. That being said, the Mink foil does work relatively well. It has such a nice variety of colors, and it's pretty easy to find. So if you're going for your basic colors, I would highly suggest the iCraft Deco foil, the large roll with 25 feet in it. And if you need a specialty color, you want to switch to the Heidi Swapp Mink line. Try to avoid these tiny baby rolls of the Deco foil because you are just getting ripped off. The final thing that you're going to need is the machine to make the magic all happen. I have the Heidi Swapp Mink machine, and I did consider this a bit of an investment because it was about $100, and I thought, how often am I honestly going to be foiling things? Well, you might be able to tell from my foil collection that I love it, and I definitely do it for a lot of special projects that I have. I've done it for invitations for events. I've done it to make personalized bookmarks. I have done prints that I've then foiled afterwards, and I usually had bad results with that when I was using a regular laminator. Now I know that quite a few people will say, well, you can get a regular laminator for $30 at the office supply store, just use that, it's fine. But there's a difference between fine and perfect. So I find that this definitely gives the best results out of any of the different laminators that I've tried, and I tried a few. I don't even want to think about how much money I spent buying those different laminators when I really should have just gotten the machine. Now, that being said, if you are just looking to quickly use foil, you don't want to use it regularly, then a laminator might be the way to go. This works in pretty much the same way, where there's an on-off switch at the back, and then there are different temperature settings. I typically use temperature setting number 3, and I've had quite good results with that. The other thing that this comes with is a plastic covering, and this plastic covering opens up so that you can put your paper inside and your foil on top, and then feed it fold side first into your machine. It will move slowly by itself through the machine, and then at the end you get to open it up for the big reveal. Enough talking about foiling. Let's actually do a sample. I want to print off another one of these sheets. It's not very exciting, but we can still foil it. And we're going to do a comparison of the two types of foil. So we have the exact same sheet. I'm going to print it on my super fine paper and then process it through the Mink machine. Let's do a straight up foil comparison. So on this side, I'll do the Mink foil, and then on this side, I'll do the deco foil. I also want to show you the results you get with crinkled foil. I have another page that I'll show you that on, because you might think, oh, well, I can reuse this part, or it's not that bad. I promise you it is, and I will prove it. You want to cut a piece that is as large as the space you're using. Sometimes you can cut tiny pieces if you're trying to save your foil, but that's part of why I love getting a 25-foot roll. It's really not much more expensive than the 10-foot roll, and that way you can just cut a large swatch of foil and you don't have to worry that you are wasting too much foil. I find that my results are typically better if I have a larger swatch, because there's not as much shifting that the foil can do. And I have had it where I've tried to use tinier pieces, and as it's rolling into the machine, I see it angling, and then I ruin an entire piece because I wanted to save a little bit of foil. When you do this, try not to pick the world's tiniest scissors to cut your foil. Looking at my deco foil, it obviously got a little bit hurt at the bottom here, but that side I can just move off of the page, and you want to make sure that this nice flat bit here is what's actually covering your design. Now let's cut a bit of the Mink for the other side. The Mink foil feels significantly thinner actually than the deco foil. I would say the deco foil feels twice as thick as this foil does, which means that, I don't know, I'm a bit of a bull in a china shop, and I typically get wrinkles and crinkles and things, and I find that that will happen more easily with the Mink foil as opposed to the deco foil. So if you're a bull in a china shop, be extra careful with this one. Now we have the two foils placed down. You want to make sure it's covering your entire design all the way, and then put it inside of your plastic cover. Once your machine is fully heated up, the preheat's all done, then you can put your foil through. It takes a little while for it to move through the machine, so I don't know, that can be time that you're doing some lettering for your next project. Now, the foil machine itself actually puts off quite a smell, as with any laminator. Make sure that you are using it in a well-ventilated area, that you have windows and doors open, and I usually like to put the machine outside to cool down once I'm done. Get any of those chemicals outside of the house. So make sure that there are no dog hairs or anything like that as it's going through. Any little bit of dust or hair, anything like that, will cause that part of your foil not to adhere. Hopefully that dog hair went through in an area that wasn't supposed to be foiled. You don't have to, but I typically do let the foil cool down before I peel it off. So when I'm opening this up, I like to hold the foil down. I'll put the page to the side and wait until it's all cool for the big reveal. While we're waiting for that one to cool, let's run this through with some crinkled foil to see what the outcome would be. Now, I also want to show you that any area that you also have with toner on it needs to be covered before you put it through the machine. Otherwise, that toner is going to stick to the plastic and ruin your plastic cover. So if you have anything like that, I will typically take a leftover or once used piece of foil or even a piece of paper and cover up that other toner with the foil or the paper. This foil has been crinkled, we'll crinkle it a little bit more just to make sure that the crinkle damage shows up. And then I'll use a very thin piece of paper to cover up the toner on this side. Now, the reason that you don't want to use the wrinkled foil is because everything only gets one shot going through this machine. You can't put it through again. Once that chemical reaction has happened, even for instance with this side here that I've covered up with the paper, the chemical reaction is still going to happen, but it's just not going to adhere to any foil. So that means that I will not be able to put this or even this back through the machine and expect any new foil to adhere to it. Now it's time for the reveal to see how each of these worked. So this one was the Heidi Swapp Mink. And you can see here, I obviously had something underneath the foil that prevented it from adhering. There are also areas where there are quite a few dots. So we have black dots happening here and here and here and here and here and up in this D and up in this D. So if this was my final piece, I would probably be throwing it all out because those little black dots are just so obvious. Let's look at the deco foil. Oh my goodness. I feel like you can't even compare the two. I was sitting here thinking, well, I hope this demonstration proves what I've been saying because I'll be really embarrassed if the Heidi Swapp looks amazing and the deco foil ends up with junk. And you can see, like, these were in the exact same folder. So it was going through the same time. It had the same little blips underneath, but the deco foil seems to have overcome it much better. There's a tiny little black dot here. This one is almost completely perfect, as is the tiny, tiny small one. Though fair enough, the Heidi Swapp one also did the tiny small one quite nicely. But this square here, I feel, really proves the point. It is solid. There are 3 teeny tiniest ever little dots in it, but that is not what you would notice. Whereas with the Heidi Swapp, your eye goes straight to those black dots. All right. Deco foil all the way. Now let's look at these two. This side, big reveal. So you can hear it made a chemical reaction, but it just stuck to the paper. And it pulls off some of the toner. Now all of this toner would have ended up on the inside of that plastic cover if we didn't have this thin piece of paper covering it. And this was also the deco foil, but it was all crumpled up. So let's see how it did. And dog hair. It didn't do terribly awful, but unless you don't have any other foil, I would say that any bits that are wrinkled are parts that you will just want to throw away or use to cover over any toner that mistakenly might have been put on your page that you don't want to be using. Try not to use crumpled foil though for larger areas where lines that would have been created by the bending of the foil will be obvious. It's not so bad in the words, but large spaces, I would say, make sure that you are using that solid, beautiful, unfolded deco foil. Now here's the thing. You are going to be using up so many different materials when you're doing your foiling that it is worth it to ensure that you have the best foil out there for your jobs. You don't want to have to constantly be going back to your printer, printing off another one, foiling it all over again. And believe me, I've done that. So this deco foil is 100% the way to go unless you are looking for a specialty color that they do not provide. Look at all of their 25-foot roll options because you will be able to foil so many different things with these rolls. And you will get nearly perfect results almost every single time. Next, we are going to be looking at making your own bookmark, and this is only a tiny part of it, so that you have perfect, personalized, foiled bookmarks. I'm actually going to be making a set of these for my daughter's school class. It'll take a little bit, but they will have perfectly foiled, beautiful keepsakes for each child in the class. Join me next time when we create our first foiled project.